In the previous episode, I have mentioned about a sample of legal English document called Last Will and Testament of George Herman Ruth. And I looked at the first paragraph or the first item in that will and in that testament. And we have noticed how many features that are already in the first document or in the first part or the first paragraph, which is not really a paragraph, it's just only one single sentence. But it is a long and complicated and complex sentence, as we have seen. This sentence we looked at, it is very, very complicated. And just to add something at the very end, it says be made. Be made means that is a passive voice as well, passive structure included. And it's a very complex sentence, and it's one sentence which is a whole item in the will. The second sentence, which is another item in the will, is this one here. Now, he starts the beginning of the paragraph with the word first in uppercase. It means I'm giving you now a new idea. And the first item or the first idea which needs to be included in this sentence, you can see it's not a very simple sentence. It's a little bit long and complex. But there are still features that are mentioned earlier in my speech about the first paragraph. And in this paragraph, the second one, you can see that when he has put the word first in uppercase, he's telling us that this is a fresh idea, fresh concept. And the whole of this paragraph is just one single idea, one single concept. And that is what's being mentioned as the first concept here. So the first concept, or what I am doing, is that I direct. He didn't mention again George Herman Ruth. Again, there's no need. In the first paragraph, already he told us his name. But now, in the second one here, he says I. He didn't put a comma here. There is no need to mention the name again because it's already mentioned in the first paragraph. And then it straight away comes to the verb, direct. And of course, he moves on to say, my executors, and executors is capitalized. Now, we know that there is another party, a second party, a second side to this will. The first side is I, George Herman Ruth. But the second side, in other words, the other party, the second party is the executors, the people who are going to execute, who are going to carry out my will. Hereinafter, according to from what is in this document. Here, as I said, it means this document, this will and testament. Herein means in this document from now afterward and after. Hereinafter. In other words, from this moment and after, it will be named. They will be named, these executors. Named. You see the word the adjective named should be before the word executors. Meaning I am naming the executors in this document. From this point in my document onwards, I will mention their names, but not in this particular paragraph. My executors hereinafter, meaning in this document from now onwards, named. They are named, they're given names, and we will see what their names in a minute. And of course, if the name's going to be mentioned, they have to be in uppercase. And now we know what uppercase. Let's remind ourselves, it is uppercase, meaning all the letters of the word are written in capital, like the word first here. So the names will be mentioned in capital later on in another paragraph. So hereinafter named, to pay all my just debts and funeral expenses. So they are named to pay. He's saying, I am directing them to pay all my just debts and funeral expenses. Meaning that they are going to be paying all my debts that are fair debts. Not anybody who claims that they have debts with me. It has to be just. But only just these that they will be paying, which is my debts and my funeral expenses. The word just here can mean two things. Can mean just to be meaning only, my only debts and funeral expenses. And it can also mean fair, that only the debts that are proven, in other words. So they will pay my debts and funeral expenses, meaning my funeral expenses. When I die, any expenses related to my death, they will cover them as well. They will pay them. And they will pay my debts. And they will do that as soon as after my death, as may be practicable. So they will pay all these as soon as after my death. As soon after my death. Immediately after my death, they will pay these debts and expenses, funeral expenses. As may be practical. Now here, as means whenever it's practical. As soon as it's practical for them. May be practical. The word may here, it means it's not should or shall be practical. Shall be practical means it's obligatory, it's binding. But may means they have the right of do it whenever they are able to do it, practically speaking, when it's practically possible for them to do. When it's practically possible. And here the word may has got the element of yajuzu, which means it is possible for them to do. But not may in perhaps. It doesn't mean perhaps. Maybe. If it was maybe one word, then it means perhaps. But here may is an auxiliary to the verb be. So when it's practicable, they will do it. When it's practicable. Okay? When they have, when the element is practicable. Or when the circumstances allow them to do that from a practical point of view. We have noticed that even the features here, the uppercase for the word first, because it's a new concept which has been introduced, and there is a colon after it, which means I'm going to explain to you what that is. You have noticed that the amount of punctuations in this paragraph, which is only one sentence, believe it or not, and in some cases, some cases, they will do that as a paragraph, one sentence, because it's got one important concept which they need to highlight in the document. We can see the word I and my executors being the second party. And also, he didn't say my named executors. The adjective came after executors. Executors comes before. So it's qualifying who are my executors? It's going to be named hereinafter. I will name them in this document from now on. To pay, they are going to pay. It is obligatory for them to pay. It's binding for them to pay. It is a commitment from them to pay. My just debts and funeral expenses. So they are to pay the debts and the expenses. Just that. When they are, the word just here can also mean fair debts, reasonable debts and funeral expenses that are proven. So, and then as soon after my death, it means immediately after I die, they pay my debts and my expenses. But immediately after my death, when it's practical for them to do so, as may be practicable for them to do so. You see, there is an element of, he didn't say for them, he didn't explain, put all these pronouns, lack of pronouns except for the pronoun I and my, which are related to the actual first party, the only party, that's why he uses that pronoun. It's very rare to find any pronouns. If you go back to the one before, there are no pronouns at all. It says me, my document, my last testament. So it's just not actually mentioning any pronouns at all except for my and I, because he's the first party. I'm going to carry on with another item in the next episode.